let's start with prayer, because of any Bible study we have ever done, we probably need to envelop this one in prayer. So I will begin. Father, we thank you for bringing all these ladies together. And Lord, as we deal with a subject that is very much something we deal with every day of our lives, help us to be not just focused on the individual concepts and applying it to ourselves, but help us also to see what it means to you, what it means to our Maker and the one who is guiding us through life. Let us have that as our focal point and the goal of this study. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, I know all of you have heard a little bit about the MBTI, Meyers-Briggs Type Indicator. And so I want to begin today by giving you some background, because it's one of those things that's out there in the world, and I don't know about you, but often I hear those things and I go, oh, psychobabble, and I file it over here somewhere, you know. But several years ago, I ran into this concept. Somebody gave me a book, something, I can't even remember how I found out about it, but it was the first I had ever heard about it. And as I was reading it, the bells started going off saying, there's something to this. I see this in my life. I see this in myself. And in some ways, it was very much an eye-opener to me, because it helped me to understand some things about me and why I react the way that I do to different things, and why I feel out of step with the majority of the female population of the world. And it was just allowing me to say, it's okay, you're different, but you're not bad. You're not wrong. So that is just kind of just where my journey looking at MBTI began, quite by accident, and it just had the ring of truth for me. So I continued to follow up on it to say, okay, so what is this really about? And that was several years ago, probably 10 or 12 years ago. But let's get some history about MBTI. That's what the acronym for it is, Myers-Briggs Typography, or personality type. MBTI, Type Indicator, there we go. Myers-Briggs Type Indicator. It all began, and my psychiatrist daughter sitting over there will have heard of this gentleman. Carl Jung was a Swiss psychoanalyst a century ago. And years ago, the only thing I knew about Freud and Jung, remember the old Fraser show? And she was a Jungian and he was a Freudian, and they always clashed. Well, I knew a lot about Freud because he's a little weird, and I'd read a lot of stuff about him. And now this is the first I had heard about Jung. But anyway, he was a Swiss psychoanalyst, and he was attempting to classify human personality. If you look at science, for those of you who are scientists like Chris and different people who have studied that, one of the fundamental core ideas behind science is to take like things and group them together. You classify things by species. You have the periodic table of the elements, and you study that. You know, this element acts like this element, and so they get grouped together. This process is like this process, so it gets grouped together. So part of what science is identifying different types. But how do you do that in something as nebulous as human personality? It's not like there's a blood test and you take a sample and you say, oh, she's an INBJ with a touch of P in there, you know, because that's what the blood test comes up. It doesn't work that way. Personality is something that can't be seen. You can see the results, but you can't see the thing itself. And so scientists were in a quandary. How do you quantify personality? How do you break it down to where you can study it? And Carl Jung came up with a theory that allowed them to do that. The basis of Carl Jung's theory was that particular personality preferences are characteristic of our basic nature. So he identified 8 different personality characteristics, and those became the numbers or the letters that identify our different personality types. It's 4 groups of 2 pairs, so that's 8 different ones. And that, I'm going to repeat that just because it's very important. The particular personality preferences are characteristic of our basic nature. according to Jungian theory, those personality characteristics do not change with age. Once properly identified, you will always keep the same set of letters. Now, you can change your behavior to some degree. For instance, as you go through life and you are put in a position where you are teaching people or leading people or doing that, an introvert may function as an extrovert all through his life, but those initial preferences will not change. And that's a fundamental principle of the MBTI instrument for analyzing human personality, that it doesn't change. You change your behavior according to the needs of your life, but your basic preferences stay the same. Once Jung had come up with classifications, that allowed us to measure and observe and predict and influence human personality. It took something that was very much a guessing game, just information that we had all been absorbing all of our lives, but it gave scientists a way to look at it and to analyze it. And that is what moved it into the world of science. Now, psychology is still very much a soft science. It's not 2 + 2 = 4. So what you're dealing with here is never going to be that cold cut. But at least it gives us a basic beginning. All right, so Carl Jung developed this philosophy, or this theory of personality preferences. And then along came Catherine Briggs. She was an American woman with no formal psychiatric training, which is one of the things that some circles hold against Meyers-Briggs, but nevertheless, in those days, it was a little different than it is now, where you had to have letters after your name before anybody believed what you had to say, Catherine Briggs had been developing her own theory of personality, and she ran across or was reading the works of Carl Jung. And at that point, what he had to say so clarified what she was working on, brought such clarity to what she was doing, that she just adopted his principles as her own and began working from that. Now, her goal was to take the theory of all of these different personality preferences and turn them into an instrument, into something we could use, a tool to measure those different personality preferences. So in the 1940s, she and her daughter, by the name of Isabel Myers, thus you get the Meyers-Briggs, began to create a questionnaire, very similar to the one that you took earlier, that allowed you to identify in each individual these different preferences. Since that time, since the 1940s, the Myers-Briggs type indicator has become the most widely used psychological instrument in the whole world. It's been translated into 14 different languages, and some of you, I'm sure, have run into it in your professional capacity. The military uses it a lot. Hospitals use it. All kinds of workplace environments use it in order to determine what jobs different people are suited for. Career counselors use it a lot to say, this is your personality index, you would do well in this type of job, or you would do well with this type of mate. People use it in dating and in marriage, and you would do well as a second assistant, not the leader of the whole program, or you would do well as the leader of the program, but not the technological person. So anyway, all of these different things throughout the world, Myers-Briggs has been used. Now, one thing I want to do is give a little bit of a disclaimer, I guess. Well, let's not go there yet. Let's not go there yet, because it'll throw up its own disclaimers. But so for the next 3 weeks, what we're going to do is look at the Myers-Briggs type indicator test and our preferences in personality and how that affects things. So week 1, which is today, we're going to determine what our own individual personality indexes are. All right, and then the second week we're going to talk about how personality affects our Christian lives. How does that translate into how we deal with people, how we look at church, how we study the Bible, all of those different factors. We're going to study how that personality affects our Christian life. And then finally, the third week, and this is the one that excites me the most, we're going to talk about how Christ and our Christian life affect that personality. And what happens when you have an INTJ who gets saved. and how God works in that, and how you can see him working. So I'm looking forward to all of those different things. So what is personality? Let's talk about that first. As I said, it's a very nebulous thing. We all see it. We all see the results. It's everywhere and in every person. You get a quiet person sitting over here. Over here you have a loud, abrasive person, but over here you have a loud and endearing person. So what is the difference there? You know, how do you know what that is? You have, on the one hand, a field marshal, person who, you know, lines everyone up and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da and gets things done. Over here you have a mastermind who's working behind the scenes and has the possibility of being actually a serial murderer. You know, you can see that. You know, you get guardians, you get artists, you get Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw. All of those things are different personalities, and we see them everywhere. So today we're going to classify ourselves, and partly because it brings you personal clarity. It helps you to understand some things about yourself that you might have not have understood before, but also because it facilitates relationship. If you understand why someone else acts the way that they do, then you're much more forgiving, and you know how to work with them, so that when your personality is great, as long as you understand that it's not wrong, it's just different, then you, as a thinking individual, can change your behavior so that it doesn't become an issue. And the two of you can work together simply because you know that the reason she does this or he does this is not because she's being obnoxious, or not because she's lying to you or trying to manipulate you. It's because that's how she looks at the world. And the world is there for everyone to see, but we all have different lenses. So if you can understand the color that they're seeing when they look at the world, then you can adjust and adapt, and everybody gets along a lot better. So the disclaimer that I wanted to give earlier falls in place right now. The Meyers-Briggs personality indicator is not the Bible. It is not infallible. It is not pure science. It is not an ultimate truth in any way. What it is a tool. It gives you general concepts and lets you apply them to specifics in your life. But those generalities can be very, very eye-opening. So don't go out of here thinking, oh, I have an INB or INPJ on my, or TJ on my shirt, whatever letters you end up with. You know, and I'm wearing that, and that's ironclad, and if I walk up to an EFSP, I will never get along with that person. That's not the truth. That's not what this is. It's a tool for clarification, a tool for understanding, and a tool to toss out the window if it doesn't make any sense to you. Okay? So let's talk about what our preferences are. We did the test already, but I want to have some fun with us figuring out right now what we are. So remember, Jung said that personality preferences are characteristic of our basic nature. They are foundations of personality. A preference is what you are inclined toward. One example that they always give in all the books that I read was right-handedness, left-handedness. You have a preference toward your right hand. Doesn't mean you can't use your left hand. It means that all the time you use your right hand, and so that signature always looks the same. Ever tried to sign your signature with your left hand? It looks like something that would not pass the teller's scrutiny at the bank. They would say, no, that is not you. That's because we use that right hand all the time, and so it becomes the stronger of the two. It's your go-to. So it is with preference. It's not that, say, in the realm of intuitive or sensing. It's not that you can't look around you and make a list of all the things that are there. It's that you don't normally do that, and so it becomes your strength. Now, there is also a whole big debate, the nurture-nature thing. Are these preferences innate, or are they taught? Are they learned? And the answer to that question is almost always yes. Some of them are innate, and some of them are learned. And even where it's innate, it's affected by the learning that you get. So you've got to keep that all in mind too. Which, if I was trying to make this all clearer to you, I'd just muddy the waters. Because none of this is clear cut. Again, this is a soft science. It's not 2 + 2. But if we can see differences and understand what they are and see those influences and acknowledge them for what they are, then we're closer to the truth for ourselves individually. And that's what we're shooting here for. All right. Thinkers never become feelers. They may, however, develop their feeling side and use it more often. And that is what you see in life. If you test out as a T over, as a thinker over a feeler, a T over an F, then you are always going to be that. There are 4 different sets of pairs. The first one, oh, let me pass you this out. We have a handout. Everybody just take one and pass it on. The first one is introvert versus extrovert. Now, when you first hear that, you're going to say, oh yeah, I know what introvert and extrovert is, because that's a common phrase that we all use all the time. But it's a little bit different in Briggs-Myers than it is in just everyday life. An introvert is not, when you're talking about personality type indicators, an introvert is not just a shy person. It's not whether you are able to deal with other people. It's not whether you have a default of being on your own all the time. That's not what it's about. The first set of pairings is defined this way. It's where we get our energy. All right, so think about that. And this little piece of paper that's coming around is going to have this all written down for you. So the first set of pairing is introvert and extrovert, and the question is, where do you get your energy? So we're going to do a little test, just a division thing right here so that we can see what our class is made up of, okay? I'm going to read you 5 questions, and you are going to, not until I find where they are though, you are going to group yourselves according to introvert and extrovert. Ah, here we go. All right,
physically group ourselves?
Yes. Physically group yourselves with introvert and extrovert, which means we are about to do the amoeba thing and divide our class in half, okay? So we're going to put I's over here and E's over here. Introverts on my right, on my left. Extroverts on my right, your right and left. What I want you to do is keep score on these, all right? If I say something that's not like you at all, write down a 0. If I say something and you think, oh, that's sort of like me, write down a 1. And if I say something that it's like, oh, that is exactly like me, then give it a 2. All right? So it's either 0 or 2. And if you fall in the middle, give yourself a 1. Okay? All right, so the first question is, I get energized by socializing and talking with people.
So 0
is not me at all. 2 is yes. Give me points for that, okay? Number 2, I am relatively easy to get to know, and most people find me friendly, outgoing, and enthusiastic. I am relatively easy to get to know, and most people find me friendly, outgoing, and enthusiastic. Number 3, I am comfortable being with and meeting new people. Number 8. No, it's question number 8. It's number 4 that I'm going to ask you. So number 4, I feel lonely and restless if I spend long periods of time alone. And number 5, I develop my ideas and reach conclusions by talking. I tend to think out loud. All right, now here's question number 6. I feel awkward. Oh no, stop that. Add that up.
Can you read the 4th question again, please?
Yes, I can. I feel lonely and restless if I spend long periods of time alone. Long periods of time alone.
I know.
All right, you got a point on that? Put that under the E. That was to test if you were an extrovert. See what your score is on that.
6.
Okay, under introverting, I feel awkward at social events where I don't know many people, but I enjoy talking one-on-one with someone I feel connected to.
I'm sorry. One more time.
Okay. I feel awkward at social events where I don't know many people, but I enjoy talking one-on-one with someone I feel connected to. Number 2, I like to spend a lot of time alone. And remember, you're doing 0, 1, or 2. 2 when, yeah, that's me every day of my life. 0 if I never even saw that before. Okay. Number 3, I tend to have a few close friends on whom I focus most of my attention rather than a lot of acquaintances. Number 4, instead of approaching others, I wait for them to approach me. And number 5, people often perceive me as shy or aloof. Aloof. Stare. Look down. Yes.
I missed the first question.
The first question is, I feel awkward at social events where I don't know many people, but I enjoy talking one-on-one with someone I feel connected to.
Okay.
Okay? So, if you scored higher on the first batch, you are an extrovert. And please move to this side of the room. If you scored higher on the I side, the introvert side, the second one, move to this side of the room. And if you have right in the middle, pick one.
I'm not middle. I'm 6E and 8I.
Then go I.
I am.
Because you can always change.
She doesn't want to be an introvert.
All right, so you see little yellow papers right there? And somebody, Dee, you've got the papers and the crayons. Over here,
They're at my table.
you have the.
Oh, you have them.
Papers and the crayons. Yeah, the papers are over there, the crayons are there. I want you to write on there just a great big I if you're the introvert side, E if you're the extrovert side.
Was it? Oh, I wasn't. Oh, I wasn't close. We're all getting the paper.
Does everybody get a piece of paper that says
No,
I?
you just want one.
One I.
One I, one big I.
I need very specific.
Okay, I'm sorry. One big I to represent your group. And on that piece of paper that I gave you with the little stick figures, go ahead and circle the one that you were. Or write a big I if you're an I, or an E if you're an E.
Are you Mom? Mom's an I.
I.
Really?
I just asked that for the benefit of the crowd.
Where are you guys?
Oh,
What do you
I
guys?
am the wrong I.
This is E.
Next, we're going to go to the group that is sensing and intuiting. That's S and N. Now, it's an N for intuiting because we already had an I, so it's intuiting. So if you want to spell it N-T-U-I-T-I-N-G. Sensing and intuiting. All right, let me give you a basic definition. Again, remember what we've done is we're dividing life into these different ways of functioning in the world. So the sensing and the intuiting is how we take in information. All right. The first one was how we are energized, what gets us going. The second one is how we take in information. You can either do it, think of it as inductively or deductively if you've studied logic at all, which I realize there are probably two of us in here that have. But deductively, you start with a general principle and you apply it to the individual items. That is more like the intuitive because you're taking abstract ideas, general concepts, and then you draw conclusions from that. The sensor is very inductive. It's this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened, conclusion. Okay? So a sensor is very in touch with the world. He's very hands-on with the way that he perceives information. If it's something that he did, he saw, he touched, that's what he remembers. Okay? The intuitive mostly doesn't pay any attention to what's going on around them anyway because it's all happening up here. Okay? All right. Let me go to the right chapter here. Hang on one second. Chapter 4. I love Kindles. Okay, so sensing versus intuiting, the information gathering preferences, how we take in information. So question number 1, and again, you're doing 0. If it never passes through my mind that I would even react that way, that's a 0. Up to a 2, if that is exactly it, you nailed it on the head for me. And in the middle is the 1. All right, question number 1.
What are we starting on, S or N?
We are starting on S.
Okay.
I tend to be practical, realistic, and matter of fact. Number 2, I'm more interested in facts and figures than in theories. I like facts and figures that support my theories, but. Number 3, I prefer tasks that have a practical application and produce tangible results. Number 4, I'm a good observer. I notice my surroundings and often remember the details. Number 5, I have a great capacity for enjoying the here and now and am often content to let things be.
You said this was S?
This is S. I have a great capacity for enjoying the here and now and am often content to let things be as opposed to wanting to.
Can you say
3 again, yes. 3 is, I prefer tasks that have a practical application and produce tangible results.
the last one again? That's a little tricky.
Yeah.
Could you explain it?
Yeah, okay.
Read
let
it
me
and
see.
then explain it.
I prefer tasks that have a practical application and produce tangible results. So I prefer to be making something with my hands.
Okay.
Solving a problem on how to make this engine work. And the tangible result is that when I'm done, it's functioning and has a pragmatic use. So think, and when you're talking sensing and intuiting, think practical and think theoretical.
And
Think
tangible
hands-on
versus-
or abstract. Okay, does that help clarify it a little bit?
Yeah.
Must be the other one.
And if you don't need to do the total, adding the points, that's just a tool. If you hear it in my definition and you say, oh yeah, I know what I am, then just go ahead and write down N or S.
That would be an S.
So if you were high on that, you were intuitive?
It's on, if,
Yes.
That was high on.
That's
no,
your
we're doing S
We're
right
doing
now.
S first.
So if you like to, if you're very practical and very hands-on and observant of the things around you, then you're an S. If, on the other hand, you, here's number 1 for intuiting. It can be hard for me to stay focused on the present because I often speculate about several ideas at once. So it's in your head, okay?
Oh.
Okay.
So number 2, I tend to use metaphors and analogies when describing or explaining something. This is like this because, this is this way because it's like this.
Yeah.
See, that's all abstract. I rely on hunches, inspiration, and imagination for a lot of my information. Okay? I don't have to have examples sitting in front of me. You can make leaps in your imagination to conclusions. Again, it's happening up here. I look for underlying patterns and the big picture. I don't like getting caught up in specific details. I pay little attention to what is going on in my immediate surroundings. I can be very unaware of the here and now. Because for the strong intuitive, most of life really happens up here, and what's happening out there is kind of irrelevant.
Can you read those all again?
I sure can.
What?
They seem
It could
really
be crazy, but I think I'm
similar.
like exactly down the middle.
Like a 1 on all of them?
Well, like, it just ends up, like I'm half and half.
That's not a bad thing.
Okay.
It can happen.
Um, It can be hard for me to stay focused on the present. Okay, you know what? Let me do this. Let me give you a series of,
No, can
Sit-
you read the questions for
all
me?
right, I'll read the questions again. It can be hard for me to stay focused on the present because I often speculate about several ideas at once. I tend to use metaphors and analogies when describing or explaining something. I rely on hunches, inspiration, and imagination for a lot of my information.
My information.
Because remember, this is about how we gather information. where we pull our information from. Do we pull it from the things happening in front of us or the theories that we've either read or developed? Okay? I look for underlying patterns and the big picture. I'm not that concerned with the details. Give me the big picture, and then I'll worry about the details afterwards. Okay?
Okay.
And finally, I pay little attention to what's going on in my immediate surroundings. I can be very unaware of the here and now. All right. Now, let me read you some synonyms, and I may go back and give it to you. The introvert extrovert, we don't need that much. I think we're okay on that. All right. A sensor prefers facts and concrete information, are more interested in what is actual, pay attention to specifics, are practical and realistic, focus on the present, they value common sense, they're pragmatic, they trust their past experience, and they tend to want things as they are. That's a sensor. So if that sounds like you and you got S, then that's what it is. All right. And here's for intuitives. They prefer insights and abstract information. They're more interested in what is possible. They focus on the big picture and are inspired and imaginative. They focus on the future. They value innovation. As opposed to pragmatic, they're speculative. They trust their imagination and hunches, and they like to try something new. All right, so that's an intuitive. So, are we just making things harder for you, Andy?
Well, my questions turned out I, but the description is absolutely S.
Well, then go with the S.
Okay.
Because this is a shortened version. I only gave you 5 of the 10 questions for the
Okay.
sake of time. So that's why I'm reading the synonyms too. And this is just, we already did the in-depth test. That's going to validate or make us question. So, all right. So, sensing and intuiting. Very concrete, very abstract. And you've got those little stick figures, and they tell you something too. All right, the next one is thinking and feeling. And this is how we evaluate information and make decisions. So this is the parameters under which we make a decision. Are you a thinker or a feeler? So let me go to the right chapter on this. Thinking and feeling, the deciding preferences, how we evaluate information and make decisions. All right, question number 1. I value my ability to think and make decisions logically and clearly. Obviously, that's for a thinker.
Is this the fee?
This is the thinker. I value my ability to think and to make decisions logically and clearly. I like to debate and defend my point of view. Sometimes just to challenge my intellect, I argue both sides of an issue. Would you like to see my trophies at home?
Meet Doug and Sharla.
I have been accused of not paying attention to other people's needs and feelings. Would you like to see in my mind the list of times I have offended people? I have been accused of not paying attention to other people's needs and feelings. People sometimes see me as impersonal and overly analytical. I can be blunt and outspoken.
Well, it's just possible.
I know that makes you say, I don't want to be that, doesn't it? But, okay, feeling. Number 1. You guys ready? And I'm going to read you the synonyms again so that you can get some perspective. Number 1, I value my ability to be empathic and compassionate. I like to talk about interpersonal relationships and emotions. In my decision-making process, how others will be affected carries a lot of weight. Remember, this is how we make decisions. And other people's feelings carry a lot of weight with you on when you decide to do something. Being appreciated and approved of, being appreciated and approved of are very important to me. And number 5, when I disagree with people, it's difficult for me to tell them. All right, so here's the list of paired words for a thinker. So if you scored higher on the other, the thinking, the first one, then listen to this and tell me and see if that confirms it. You're firm-minded, you analyze the problem, you're objective and convinced by logic, you're direct, you value competence, they decide with their head, they value justice. You can be seen as insensitive, you're good at critiquing, and generally don't take things personally. So that's a big T, that's thinker. All right, feeler, gentle-hearted, sympathize with your problem or with other people's problems. You are subjective and convinced by values. You are tactful. You value relationships. A feeler decides with their heart. They value harmony. They can be seen as over-emotional. They're good at appreciating people and other things. And they usually take things personally. Okay? Everybody got that? It's easy for you to say, it's easy for you to go in with a preconceived notion and to answer according to support what your preconceived notion was, which is why I wanted you to take the test before I started babbling up here, okay? So that maybe those of you who weren't associated with it could answer more truly without trying to. Also, where you are in your life at the time will cause you to answer the questions one way or another. If I'm living with a bunch of people who are very much P's and it's just wild and crazy and fun, I'm going to be a strong J. And that's because I'm reacting against it, probably stronger than I am. Now, and just to throw another wrench in the situation, so much for me helping that this will give us clarity in our relationships. You can be a very, very strong I or an E. And you can be a very, very strong J or P or any of the sets. And that's going to affect somewhat how your personality comes across. So you can understand what kind of a problem the psychologists were having in finding a way to type all of these different personalities because there are so many factors. Human beings are not 16 characteristics and that's it. There are as many different personalities as there are human beings alive. But if we can kind of generalize things enough that we can say, this helps me understand her motivation, or this helps me understand how she processes information, then we're ahead of the game. And so that's what the MBTI does, is it tries to give you a little bit, tries to give you a tool for understanding things, okay? So we have, is there any group that we don't have? Yeah, we have, we only have 2 of the I's, so we have a lot of, we don't have a representative of every one of these 16 different types. All right, a yellow piece of paper and write the next letter set on there, and they're over here.
Are we writing IS or just S?
Well, now you want to just take your IS.
Okay.
This wasn't for my personal writing.
Okay, so we divided up. So now we have a whole bunch of IS's over here. You guys is. And over here we've got some ES's and some EN's.
So
This is us so far.
That's so far. Okay. So now we're going to do thinking, feeling.
Rasses, right?
All right, so on the T and the F, are you a thinker? Do you value the logic? So you should already have that. Are you pretty clear on what it is? Okay, so now I want this group to divide into IST and ISF. Okay?
So T is here. You're like, this is F. Where you're going with this.
I know.
You got it.
But so that says something about you. So you guys are ESF and you guys are EST. Okay.
And so is Jenny. Well, Jenny is so far.
I can function as an extrovert.
That's my group. That's my group. I'm with you guys.
Are you with us? So now let's go to the final one. Now this one, judging and perceiving, is really hard to understand. It's not super hard to understand, but it's more difficult than the rest of them, okay? It's a lifestyle decision-making process. And it's where this whole thing comes down into action. The first one was how the world affects you. Are you an introvert or an extrovert? Are you energized by the world, or do you run away from it? Okay, so that affects the world. That's the world affecting you. And then the two middle ones are how you process information, how you take it in, and how you evaluate it. Now this last one is how that changes your behavior. So we went from behavior to thought and information, and now we're back to behavior, but it's how you interpret all of this and how it results in behavior in you. So J is, let me bring up my chapter.
Is there a question that goes with this?
Yeah, I'm about to give it to you.
Oh, sorry.
We just kept going back and forth so many times that I had to find it. Okay. Judging and perceiving the living preferences, what lifestyle we prefer. Okay, question number 1.
For judging.
Judging, perceiving. Yes, this is for judging.
Judging.
It's just so hard to say.
I know, see, I hate that word because we all go, oh, I don't want to be judgmental. But think as judging as synonymous with decisive. Making a choice. Making a decision. Being ready to go with it, okay? That's what judging is. Okay, first question. I dislike having things undecided.
Oh, yes.
See that, but this is judging,
This is
and what
judging.
was it, we what?
You dislike?
You dislike having things undecided. Okay, the next one is, I find it hard to relax or concentrate if my environment is disorganized or cluttered. Number 3, it is important to me to be on time, and I can't understand when this isn't a priority for others.
Where's our other sister?
She would be not in this J. Number 4, I like to know what the schedules and time frames are. If there's no plan, I feel uneasy.
Hey, let's drive across country, Lori.
I'll tell you how to do it.
Yeah.
All right, and then number 5, I need to finish my work before I can relax and have fun.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I definitely.
Chris, I'm so surprised. Okay, now perceiving. This is a person who, it's just think of it as the opposite of judgment. You are happy to let things just come as they come. So let's read the questions and you'll be able to see. So this is perceiving. I'm relatively easygoing, adaptable, and flexible. When there are last minute changes, I just adapt to them.
We should have done our husbands.
Oh, we can. We sure can. I like to start new projects, and I'll usually start the next one before I'm finished with one.
Oh, that's true. I know one of those.
Don't you look at me.
Okay. Being on schedule is not the most important thing in my life. Deadlines give me a general idea of when something's due. A deadline is just a hopeful suggestion.
Okay, I have a question.
Okay.
When I'm doing something for somebody else, I absolutely have a deadline. When it's for
Now
myself,
see, this is a perfect example of how your other letters affect you. And I'm just going to
So
throw
my
this out there.
S is
She's
gonna-
a feeler, and so that
Yeah.
makes her act as a judger when she's doing it for someone else because she wants to take care of them. She's worried about what they feel, and so it affects the outcome of her J and S and
P.
P. Yeah, thanks. So just go by what is generally true, what rings truest for you. And I'm going to give you synonyms in a minute.
okay,
for
you
that
tell
one.
me what to put for that one. You would know better than
J
I
and
do.
P.
No, for that question,
Oh,
for
for
number
that
3.
question, let me read it again.
Yeah.
Being on schedule deadline is a hopeful suggestion.
Yes. I think that you're not OCD about it either way.
Yeah.
One.
Yeah, a 1.
That's what I
We just
Okay.
said, I think we're in the minority, and I said, that's so weird because I thought everybody was just like me. So did I. Wait, really?
Okay, here's one.
Exact opposite.
Are we?
Almost the same.
But I still love you.
That would be the whole point. I don't usually make to-do lists, but if I do, going back to check things off is not important. Writing them down is a reminder enough.
Oh, that's a 0. No, I got a little.
Okay, so this is judge or perceiver.
I write them, but I don't have to check them off. That doesn't
Oh,
bother
no,
me.
I have to go back and write them down and check them out.
I write stuff down just to check stuff
Me
off.
too.
See?
Okay, and the last one, my way of organizing my room or workspace can appear chaotic to others.
This is Shawnee's.
It's only because I can't do it.
No fair doing your family as we go.
Yeah.
Okay, now let me read.
I have no
Let me
administrative
read
skills.
these synonyms for you because it'll help. Okay,
Put you in
judging.
charge of
It
3 and
really matters
4-year-olds.
though.
Judging. You seek closure. You value structure. You plan ahead. You like order. You work now and play later. You like to complete projects. You are goal-oriented. You are more structured. You like things settled and decided.
Oh, I'm just so.
That's if you're J.
If
So
you're
you're
a J.
ISFJ?
If you're a perceiver, you seek openness. You value the flow. You adapt as they go. You like flexibility. You play now and work later. You like to start projects. You are process oriented. You're more easygoing. And you like things open and spontaneous.
I'm such a
Okay?
problem
So,
is I'm an
judge or
introvert.
perceiver. Now, I'm going to just throw this personal thing in there. I have tested judging and I have tested perceiving. I'm kind of in the middle on that. But I finally came to the conclusion I am a J. But because I'm also a thinker, not a feeler, the times when I look at a situation and I say, this requires openness and no schedule, then I function there because I have applied the theory to the action. And so I am a J, but I function like a P a lot of times
Because your environment requires it.
because my environment requires it. No, I don't care about my environment because my theory requires it.
Okay.
Okay, does that make sense? So all of these, the thing with this is it's one of those situations where the sum is greater than the individual pieces of the puzzle because they all work on each other to make us who we are. All right, so I suspect if you go home and if you really do enjoy this, do a little bit more research, read a little bit more. We're going to get your test results back and that'll tell you how you tested. And sometimes you'll say, I don't think that test is exactly right, but this really fits me. When I start reading you the descriptions of these 16 different personalities, something is going to click and you're going to say, that's me, that answers me, that explains me.
So it's all right to be a little confused right now.
It is. That's why we did the test, was in order to clarify. Yeah. But if you just go by the basic principle, I may have given you more information than you needed, to be honest, here today. Maybe next time if I do this again, I won't bombard you with so much. I'll just give you a general description. Are you very specific information oriented, or are you abstract information oriented? That might have been enough for you to determine what you were. But this is the frail human attempt to describe what God created and to help us deal with it and to figure it out. Okay? So next week we will find out what our tests say. And I'm going to give you all tags when you come in next week so we can wear our alphabet. And before long, you'll be having conversations with each other. Oh, that's just so E of you, And eyes, your NT is showing, that kind of stuff. But one of the things we're also going to talk about is the pitfalls of depending upon a system like this and letting it channel your thinking beyond what is reasonable or real. Okay, so we're going to talk about that too. But okay, Jeannie has a question.
I just think it's interesting that D is the same letters that I am because she's so creative and artistic.
Oh,
I feel
yeah.
like these
See,
people-
that's another thing, and you can be thinking about this next week. I want to talk about the other factors that are not included in this. Creativity is a big one because creativity, whilst it's part of personality, it's also a separate entity. Another big thing is IQ. A super smart INTJ does not look the same as a super creative INTJ. But they're
Dana
both
versus
still INTJs. Okay? Are you a little bit better? Look at that stick figure thing and think about the letters that you came up with, and if you need to adjust it a little bit, do so. But next week, I think will go a long way to helping you really see what the different personalities are. Thank you. And if anybody didn't make it today and they feel like they can't come, tell them that's crazy, just to go ahead and come, because you'll be able to pick up right where you were. Or you'll be able to join back in with us.